Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, Dungeon Crawls. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about dungeon crawls. Are they really necessary? And how much fun can they be?
Well, they can be a lot of fun. Are they really necessary? No. But if you do have them, they can be a lot of fun.
Right. Now, dungeons don't necessarily have to be massive, multi-game session adventures.
No, well, the term donjon essentially is an underground jail.
Yeah.
So it could be as big as this room, and that's your dungeon. But for some reason, I don't know how it got like this, but for some reason dungeons turned into like these multi-layered, mile-long labyrinths of traps, treasure rooms, monsters, orcs, whatever, underground. But so, that's just how kind of fantasy works, and that's fine.
And dungeons, it's all in the name of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And even Tunnels and Trolls.
Tunnels and Trolls, Monsters and Mazes.
That's a TV show.
Oh.
That we won't get into.
Right. Wizards and Walls.
I've never heard of that one.
I'll tell you about it later. So, one of the things I remember most about games when we play them, okay, is I remember the epic dungeon crawls. Especially the ones that take, 3 or 4 sessions to get through, or more to get through. And we've had some that have taken a long time to get through.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying sometimes it can be a little difficult to get through them. And we should also bring up the point that maybe you should have dungeon crawl specific characters that can function during a dungeon crawl adequately. Your foresty outdoors ranger or your barbarian are going to have a hard time in dungeons.
Well, not necessarily a hard time, but is that their environment?
No, and they have a lot of advantages in forests, mountain, favorite terrain. Exactly. Okay, favorite terrain.
Unless their favorite terrain is underground.
Is a dungeon. Okay, we'll bring that up
about
later. But my point is, if you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have this huge dungeon that you're going to be exploring, maybe you should stop at the local tavern and recruit a dwarf. Why? Dwarf
sense.
Stone sense, dungeon sense, dark vision, tunnel sense. Some of the dwarves are tunnel fighters, miners, that sort of thing. So they're pretty useful down there.
Yeah, it's great to have a dwarf.
It's great to have a dwarf.
In a dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
Make sure you always have a thief, because every dungeon is always loaded full of traps.
Traps, locked doors, all sorts of things. So you have a really, really skilled rogue that you can take with you to go down there. So, what was like the first dungeon you ever created?
Wow, that would have been when I first played. I just randomly started drawing things together on this graph paper that I'd gotten. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like 3 levels that I had. I can't remember. I wish I'd kept the thing, but I think I got lost somewhere along the many years having played since '79 that it just kind of went somewhere, got thrown away somehow.
But you do have a book somewhere, and I don't know where it is, that shows some of the dungeons that you did.
Yes, in fact,
here it is. Delaney has some rather extensive notes and notebooks full of dungeon plans.
Yeah, this was the very first adventure for this campaign, or the original campaign in this world.
Yeah, Adane.
Called Redstone Keep.
Yep. Yeah, beneath Redstone Keep, which is a very extensive dungeon system.
Yes, it had rumors. I had all this typed out and wrote. Now I don't always write out my adventures now. Usually the first adventures I do. So I got everything in here: monsters, the creatures,
rat people,
Ratmen, Yellow Musk Creeper.
I remember that.
Yeah.
The Yellow Musk Creeper. Yep.
And then
there you go.
There was the dungeon.
There's the plan.
It's kind of hard to see, but
let's hold it out. There you go.
there was a keep that they came in on.
Outer walls.
The inner buildings.
Yep. And then of course you go to the next page, and there you go. You start dropping down below. Here's your tunnel systems, your rooms, pillars of the room holding up the ceiling.
It was a ritual site.
Yep, different rooms in here. Kind of a cave system
There's
again.
a river.
There's a river that they cave out. I remember that because
that's
how they escaped, the underground river.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is the room that Dave Lott was killed in. Yeah, because don't you remember they dragged his body down and got in boats and they took away. They left down the river and we couldn't get to him.
Well, you guys came down the stairs, and I don't think that was.
Well, I think those stairs right there. And we came around this corner.
This was the prison.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Well, yeah, okay, but we went into the prison and there were people in there being held. I think this is it right here because he ran into this room, and they were in there waiting for him around the corner.
Yep. So anyway,
it's an important, concept to keep your maps and your architectural drawings correct so that you can figure out where you're going.
And then there was the next one, Fortress of the Grassy Knoll.
Mm-hmm. Remember that? So,
which was an old giant's sanctum.
Yeah. So, did you use actual pre-made plans or did you draw these yourself?
These are all drawn myself. These are some of my original ones.
So, folks, you don't actually have to do that by drawing, yourself. I know there's Dungeon Creator software now where it'll create random dungeons, big and small ones. And they could be just as elaborate as you want them to be, just as large, as crazy as you want them to be. Some really good examples of dungeons. I don't know if anybody here in this, in our viewing audience played Skyrim, but there's a lot of epic dungeons in Skyrim.
The dwarven ones.
Yeah, the dwarven ones, but there's also cave systems, outlaw caves, raider caves, that kind of stuff. And I always marvel as I'm traveling through this really elaborately huge cave system. It's like, wow, this is an epic dungeon crawl down here. This really is. I mean, there's bridges, there's rivers, there's traps, there's, all this stuff that you got to go through. And, it can be really nice to have a really good dungeon to traverse. But I think there's got to be a situation where there's some people who just don't like it.
Yeah, there are those people who do not like any kind of dungeon crawl.
And we've had them. We've had some players who just absolutely despise that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the only time I ever had a problem is when we were in an underground sewer system that was inhabited by the Thieves Guild. Right. And it was an epic crawl that probably took us 4 or 5 sessions to get through.
It was the Lair of the Spiders. Now, the Spiders were a Thieves Guild beneath the city.
Yeah.
And their system was a maze of spider. Looks like a spider web.
Spider holes everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was a little excessive, to be honest. However, I will say this. One of the best times I ever had, well, 2 of the best times I ever had. One is when we were underneath the pyramid of the snake people in the jungle.
Yes, the temple of Shuata.
Shuata, yes. And the lizard folk. Wow, that was fun. Imagine going down and down and down, spiraling down this big giant pyramid.
You guys had gotten into the temple by going up, and it was a ziggurat. It was designed after the Mayan and Aztec temples of the New World, and that's kind of where the name Shuata.
Yeah.
It was kind of an Aztec or Mayan type king of these people. He was a god king.
Yeah.
And they got to the top, and they could go inside like you can in some of the Mayan temples.
Yeah.
And they found that there was a platform that would actually lower them.
Yeah, it was
so
really
they went
cool.
lower, way down below, and then worked their way back up, and they found an artifact in the process. Mini artifacts. Yeah. And there were a lot of traps along the way, and sunken underground areas that they had to swim through and make it through to
water traps, sand traps, all kind of things, barriers.
rooms that there was actually
down.
a statue in one of the rooms. I don't know if you remember, and there were like the terracotta statues in the room, and their thief went in and stole the gem.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the gem in the first edition Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
That's the way it was designed, and he stole it, activating the terracotta golems, and which actually had skeletons in them, and
it was
a fight ensued.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a fun adventure.
Yeah, it was. One of the other ones I liked a lot is when we were playing the desert campaign.
Yep.
And we went inside the desert tomb, kind of like a King Tut's kind of thing, of passages and sand traps and hidden doors and rooms that would suddenly fill with sand and stuff like that. I enjoyed that a lot too. It's very Egyptian, very mummy-esque.
Yeah.
So you can have a lot of fun and be very inventive. You can have water dungeons, land dungeons, dungeons filled with lava, dungeons filled with insects, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Now,
however, are they for everybody?
They're not for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, in the current campaign, the party has had very few dungeons. They've had there was a tomb that they come across.
There's been tombs
that had no fighting. It was just it had been it showed up after an avalanche.
Yeah.
And they crawled inside of it and
that was kind of cool.
Used it as a place to stay warm for the night.
Yep.
And then there was the other one where it was a giant's mound. It was like the Celtic mounds.
Yeah.
With tors and the stones on it. We had have a model of one that we built, which we've shown on one of the episodes. That they actually went inside a couple of them.
Yeah. Now that was cool too.
Those were smaller.
They were small and very limited, but they provided a lot of character and a lot of atmosphere for our game, so it worked quite well. So dungeons can provide atmosphere, they can provide adventure, they can provide mystery, treasure, all kind of encounters, but they're not for everyone because not everyone gets this idea that you're traveling through these deep dungeons and tunnel systems.
Right.
A lot of people want to adventure in cities, they want to adventure in forests, they want to adventure in mountains, they want to do Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. However, remember,
Moria.
Yeah, Mines of Moria.
Or even Erebor.
Yeah. So, there are underground cities and stuff like that you can explore. So
yeah. They can be quite fun. Now, I nowadays don't use a lot of graph paper for charting out my dungeons. I use Tailspire, which takes a lot more time, but I get the imagery across to my players
you
with
get
that.
3D imagery.
There are other ones
really
like
cool.
Dungeon Alchemist and other things like that, which aren't. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there's some other ones coming out, which, like I said, I like to use them because it then gives me this. I can show my players, and they can get the sense as if they're traveling, and they can see the things that they're actually seeing.
Yeah.
I'm a very visual person. Tom is a very visual person, and I know all of our players are very visual type. People.
Nowadays, because people are so graphically oriented, they want to see everything on a computer screen, a phone screen, a TV screen, a movie screen. Those of us who kind of were raised with comic books or picture books or just books with a couple of illustrations, you had to be very, very imaginative. We had to kind of make do with what we had. But now people are very graphically oriented, so they want to see what they're traveling in. Video games play into that by having this graphic image and graphics and different kind of illustrations and momentum of images and characters. People want to see that now. So, and that's fine because you can have a lot of adventure like that. I'm not comparing one to the other and saying one is better.
And not all dungeon masters want to do that.
No, not all do. But I will say this.
Most of them do use. Well, a lot of them use the graph and,
I know.
and graph paper.
But I will say this about dungeoneering inside a campaign, is it can add a lot of character and atmosphere and a lot of adventure for a campaign.
Yep. So, a lot of fun, I think.
I think so too.
Now, the current adventure that these guys are on, I gave them a map, and it was just something to throw out as a treasure, and the party said, hey, we want to go there. So I had to create what's going to happen.
Well, I mean,
so
we're overdue in our campaign for an epic dungeon crawl.
Yep.
We really are, because we've been in the forest, we've been in the mountains, we've been everywhere.
In the plains,
the tundra,
villages.
the frozen tundra, all these places,
Yep.
we're overdue for an epic dungeon crawl. We really are. So,
Yep, and that was the party's choice. So
yeah.
anyway, I think we're going to end this episode of Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
And make sure you like, share, subscribe. Tell us about your adventures, your dungeons. I'd like to hear about them.
Yeah, I'd
if
like
you want
to see
share
some.
them with me,
I'd like
if you
to
want
see
share
some
them
other
with us,
dungeons. Yeah.
please do. You know, we'll be happy to discuss them if you
Yeah.
like, if you want to share it with us.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So anyway, may all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
Thanks, folks. Three, two, one. Thank you for calling.
It's okay. It's okay.
Two.